Okay, thank you very much, Chair, for the introduction, and Tim and all the others who dragged me out this morning. And I know you've been working very hard. Very quickly, two kind of hats to wear a little bit this morning, and I'll quickly get the hat I would probably more likely want to speak out of the way first. I am CEO of Irish Rural Link, and Irish Rural Link's main motto is sustainable rural communities. That's our motto, has been since we were founded in 91. So therefore we've kind of pioneered, sometimes to our great expense, the idea of sustainability. And at the moment, we're managing in partnership a Farm Peat programme, which was the end result of the Clara Bog, which really is a programme not alone to compensate, it's a pilot project, so we hope it will be mainstreamed, to educate farmers who have land adjoining bogs or peatlands how to manage it, and to give them a source of pride in that management. Because up to now, that land is seen as a negative. It's seen as something, God help you, how did you end up with that piece of land? Instead of being a positive. So that's that programme. The Wetlands Forum, and you'll hear from my good friend and colleague Kieran, we founded that and we supported administratively, so that's under our umbrella, and as Catherine said, doing fantastic work. And so I'm not going to talk about that, I'll let Kieran do that. We also manage a Just Transition programme. And you see, Just Transition is a great word, it's a great phrase. For many, it doesn't seem to mean a lot, but it has to mean something. And in Irish Rural Link terms, that's practical ways and means to go from point A to point B. Not to go around the rest of the alphabet on the way, but to try and go straight. So that's what we're trying to do. So that's that hat. Love to talk to you more about that, but I know time is a problem. And I know Tim said, Seamus, you've got to be a turf cutter, those bad people that oppose everything, so you've got to be that. And I'm very proud to be that. When I was going to school, we were often teased that, the fellas from the bog, the boys from the bog, or the girls from the bog. Now, usually that was delivered as an insult, and we were really saying, yes, we're very proud of that, so we didn't mind that. My grandfather on my mother's side, I think, kept the homes in Athlone and Moat and that region going with cutting and delivering turf. And I'm very proud of my grandfather. He did tremendous work. World War II was a lot easier for some people, at least in that area, because he existed. And I myself cut turf with a slán, first of all, a left hand, I'm a lefty. Left-hander slán, lefty in lots of ways, by the way. But lefty in terms of the slán, which was awkward for my father, who couldn't understand it. Many things he couldn't understand about me, by the way. But that was one of them. And secondly, of course, I saw the mechanisation. And even before I begin this slide, which is kind of a quick story as to how we should or shouldn't manage change, because this is really about managing change, I have to say that the ironic thing is, and I'm going to say this, Catherine, put your hands in your ears, this will absolutely annoy you enormously, but in the 10 years since the introduction of change, in other words, when we were supposed to stop cutting turf in 1998, we didn't really stop it until 2010, 12 years. The speed of cutting turf and excavation, sorry Catherine, increased at least 4 to 7-fold compared to the previous 10 years, because mechanisation had just begun when we were supposed to be stopping. Just think of that. Most of the turf cut up to about the late 80s was cut by hand, except the Board stuff. But I'm talking about the domestic turf for domestic families who cut a bit of turf for themselves every year, for their own fuel, etc., etc. So most of it was cut by hand, and I know, and believe me, I don't remember those days with great joy. I loved looking at it, but doing it was another matter. And then, when we were supposed to be stopped cutting turf, the sausage machine landed, the diggers and all of those things landed, and we absolutely, in my opinion, destroyed a lot of bog when we should have had it stopped in 98. And I need you to understand how that shouldn't have and should not have happened. And what you see there on the slide before you, look, in 1988, Ireland basically decided and agreed with the EU that we should have a habitats directive. We were quite happy to give away loads of bog, because at that stage everybody thought, dying art, nobody's going to do that, coming into a more modern time, hand-cutting turf, for God's sake, who's going to continue doing that forever? So we'll give away lots of bog. That was fine. It's sort of the usual slow process in the EU, finally adopted in 1992 when all the European states agreed it. And signed into law, took another bit of time, 1997. Meanwhile, we now have mechanisation fully in place. You know, it's amazing. Two sets of thought going two different directions. So in 1997, that was the end of that. We began, the turf cutters, the families, began to realise in 1998, when the brown letters came in through the door, cease and desist. Stop cutting turf. There's at least 100,000, by Irish ruling figures, people who rely on turf as their main domestic heat. So see, it's like the controversy earlier this year where we were told to stop buying and selling turf by September. How do you get a cooker out of the house and another system in place in 3 months? That was the question this year to be asked. But in 1998, the same question. How do you change a heating system that quick? How do you do that? You don't. And how do you pay for it? Because again, that 100,000 by Irish ruling figures are people on lower income. So how do you look at the cost? At current costs, it's around 20 grand. It's probably 7 or 8 at the time when all of this started. So I suppose the biggest flaw in all of that was, in fact, that the letters came through the post, they frightened the Brendan Grace out of us all, and we reacted. Everybody reacted. I'm afraid I'm talking to Mairead McGuinness, a lot younger looking, threatening to go to jail rather than be stopping cutting turf. That's the way we felt. And that's the way turf cutters and families who depend on it felt. And I suppose if you get a redundancy notice in the morning, at least you have a process where you will get some sort of, you'll be giving an alternative. There was no alternatives, none. Stop cutting turf. But we need it. Our fires, our houses are dependent on it. Tough. Figure out another way. Get more oil, which is kind of ironic. But anyway, so we spent a good few years, and then we got the famous derogation. The derogation was supposed to last in 2010. There's a great deal of mythology about that derogation. Did it ever exist or not? But it was announced ministerially. And it was there. So we all happily cut turf to our heart's content, expecting that derogation to continue. And then I discovered, because Clara Bog is where I come from. It's the iconic bog mentioned by David Bellamy in the 80s on the Late Late Show, and it is the bog that I'm so close to and love. But Clara Bog I discovered in a meeting in Brussels at one stage, no, you're not getting any further derogation. In fact, you shouldn't have got the one you have. In fact, the one you have doesn't exist. So then we started saying, okay, we came back to our committee of 120 people to sort of say, lads, I think we have a problem here. We're not going to be allowed to cut turf past 2010. And in fairness to the department and government then, there was a change. There was an ability and a willingness to start discussing. Now, it took us a while to get into the discussions about, well, what is the alternative? What are we going to do post-2010? So the Clara Bog Committee decided to do that. It's very funny stories, you know, lots of people making great jokes. We were selling out and all the rest. But we did come up with an alternative. And the alternative was relocation of bog, not the absolute perfect solution, by the way, because you're still creating carbon emissions, or compensation to the tune of €1,500 per year, which, by the way, is running out shortly. And if I had longer, Chair, I could really make people laugh about how that figure was come to. There was questions in the Dáil as to how that figure was come to. Trust me, that's between me and my God at this stage, but it was very simple deduction. Anyway, 1,500 is running out, so there'll be more fun in the next couple of years over that. The solution we actually worked with, in rural terms, should I say the enemy? They're not really, Teagasc, and I see the light flashing, was that a retrofit system. The problem is not turf for many people. The problem was heating. The problem was domestic heat. That was the problem. Solve that and you solve the turf. That's what we said. In 1998, we said that. Our committee said that. And it's still taking time for that to happen. And 2 years ago, there was an announcement that we should stop selling and buying turf. There's at least 100,000 local authority houses in this country, owned by the government, owned by local authorities. None of them have had a retrofit. What's stopping that? What is stopping that? It's not the people, it's not the tenants, it's, So retrofit the houses was the solution. I suppose what I'm coming to just so look, this is the case for the turf cutters. It's the cheapest fuel. That's just the fact. And at the moment, even cheaper. Most houses are fitted with a system that is not easily taken apart. And I see the red light on, so I'll try and finish as quick as possible. When, as I said, there were no alternatives proposed. So if you're being asked to change radically your household, please give me an alternative. I didn't dream up this as a turf cutter, as a family. So where is the alternative? It wasn't there. And of course, a lot of rural housing is still dependent on domestic fuel. As I said, at least 100,000 houses. So we agreed on the solution in Clara. We took the beautiful, and it is a beautiful, secondary site not far from us. Again, as I said, Catherine and anybody who has any care for the environment would wish that was not the solution. And as I said, we are now in Irish Rural Link, and we're the ones campaigning. That pilot project, the Farm Peat project, we were the ones that are campaigning to have that happen. And finally, when we finished very raucous and tough meetings in Rahan Hall, or Clara, as it is now, with all the hardship and all the aggro and all the anger, and a lot of anger, the tenants said to myself and my colleagues, we want to be part of the next chapter of Clara Bog. That's what they asked for, despite the unbelievable militancy against the directive. And Irish Rural Link, at least, through the Wetlands Forum, through the Farm Peat project, have been putting forward those solutions. And now something like 30 farmers in Clara are part of the next chapter. So there is a roundabout solution to this, but when you're thinking about your recommendations, remember at least 100,000 households of the lower income are dependent on turf for fuel. I wish you well. Thanks very much.
Thank you.